The escalation begins, Israel under fire. The deafening sounds of war have become a cruel routine across the skies of the Middle East. As the calendar flipped past a week of brutal conflict, the situation between Iran and Israel showed no signs of slowing down. Instead, it intensified. On the seventh day of relentless attacks, the war reached a shocking new phase. Direct hits on Israel's northern and southern infrastructure, resulting in economic turmoil, civilian panic, and rising accusations of war crimes. The day began like any other in wartime Israel, with air raid sirens echoing in major cities and towns. But by Friday afternoon, the skies above Haifa, Israel's third largest city and a key economic hub in the north, were torn open by a missile strike from Iranian forces. At precisely 1440 local time, an Iranian medium-range ballistic missile slammed into an urban sector of Haifa, igniting chaos and destruction. The sound of the explosion reverberated across neighborhoods, shattering windows, cracking concrete walls, and triggering a wave of panic. Local emergency services were immediately overwhelmed as thousands rushed into underground shelters. Witnesses described the scene as apocalyptic. One woman was reported dead, and over 24 people suffered injuries ranging from light abrasions to severe trauma caused by flying debris. But Haifa was just the beginning. Within hours, southern Israel found itself under similar bombardment. At approximately 1720, another Iranian missile, possibly launched from a mobile platform inside Iranian territory, impacted near a major hospital in Be'er Sheva, a city deep in the Negev desert. Initial reports from the Israeli Defense Forces, IDF, stated that the missile had overshot its intended target, a nearby technology park suspected of housing classified military R&D facilities, and instead caused partial damage to the hospital. Windows exploded, vital medical equipment was disabled, and emergency generators were knocked offline. Fortunately, due to early warning systems, patients and staff had been evacuated to reinforced shelter zones. Even so, the psychological impact was devastating. The Ministry of Health declared a regional emergency and began transferring critical patients to other facilities. Simultaneously, a far more symbolic and economically destabilizing attack unfolded, one that struck the very core of Israel's financial infrastructure. At approximately 1845, Iranian missiles rained down on central Tel Aviv, landing alarmingly close to the Israeli Stock Exchange building, a towering glass and steel structure that symbolizes the country's economic might. Though the primary structure remained standing, several parts of the surrounding complex were heavily damaged. Photos quickly surfaced of the building's shattered windows, collapsed entryways, and frightened civilians fleeing the scene. Local media reported that some traders and office workers were still inside when the impact occurred. Emergency responders rushed in, sifting through debris and tending to injuries. The Tel Aviv municipality activated its emergency response plan, cordoning off major roads and issuing advisories to businesses throughout the city. Israel's finance ministry, in an emergency briefing, acknowledged short-term market disruption and hinted at potential foreign investor pullback if the attacks continued. As if the attacks on civilians and economic centers weren't enough, Iran escalated further. One of the most devastating blows came in the form of a direct hit on Bazan oil refinery in Haifa, the largest and most vital oil refinery complex in Israel. Iranian media, quoting IRGC sources, claimed that this was a strategic move aimed at crippling the Israeli war machine by severing its energy lifelines. Around 1930, several ballistic missiles pounded the refinery's main pipeline and adjacent processing towers. Witnesses saw towering flames and black smoke engulfing the skyline. The resulting inferno lasted for hours, despite aggressive efforts by fire brigades and the Israeli Emergency Management Authority. The Energy Ministry confirmed significant structural damage to the primary oil channel and reported a full system shutdown. Electricity grids connected to the refinery were also affected, plunging parts of northern Israel into temporary darkness. Bazan's management labeled the damage severe and unprecedented, warning that repairs could take weeks and exports may be halted. Global crude markets instantly reacted, with Brent oil futures spiking by nearly 4% in after-hours trading. While the economic ramifications were becoming more evident, something else caught Israeli military analysts off guard. Reports from Be'er Sheva, already shaken by the hospital blast, indicated the possible use of cluster munitions, a controversial and widely condemned type of weapon. Eyewitnesses and forensic investigators noted that multiple impact craters bore the telltale
Signs of submunition dispersion, smaller explosions scattered in tight circular patterns. Israeli police units found metallic fragments resembling bomblets across several urban blocks, some lodged in rooftops, others embedded in the streets. The IDF quickly mobilized its forensics division and confirmed that at least one of the ballistic missiles used had been equipped with a cluster bomb warhead, a dangerous escalation. One of the mini bombs exploded dangerously close to a daycare center, leading to mass panic among families. Two nearby homes were also struck, resulting in property damage, but, miraculously, no fatalities. However, several children were treated for psychological trauma and minor physical injuries. This revelation triggered immediate outrage within Israel. The Homefront Command issued a statement condemning the use of cluster munitions, labeling it a violation of humanitarian ethics. At the same time, the IDF published satellite imagery showing the missile's trajectory and a high-resolution analysis of the bomblet's dispersion radius, an 8-kilometer-wide impact zone. Officials accused Iran of deliberately targeting civilian zones, calling it an act of war crimes. Yet the legal question remained ambiguous. Neither Israel nor Iran is a signatory to the 2008 Convention on Cluster Munitions, meaning the use of such weapons, while condemned, is not explicitly illegal under international law for them. Still, the brutality of the cluster bomb's effect shocked the world. International watchdogs like Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International issued statements expressing grave concern and calling for an independent investigation. Israeli foreign diplomats were dispatched to several European capitals to rally support and condemn Iran's actions, while Iranian state television doubled down, insisting that all targets were military in nature and situated away from civilian populations. Adding to the growing narrative war, Iran's foreign ministry held a press conference in Tehran, reiterating that the target near Be'er Sheva was a classified military communication hub, not a daycare. The spokesman emphasized that Iranian intelligence had pinpointed weapons storage and drone assembly centers being hidden within civilian infrastructure, a claim Israel dismissed as propaganda. But perhaps the most jarring part of this entire episode was the global reaction. Tel Aviv's media strategy to paint Iran as the aggressor immediately faced backlash from parts of the international community. Critics, particularly in the Arab world, pointed to what they termed Israel's hypocrisy, reminding the world of the relentless bombing campaigns in Gaza over the years. Journalists and commentators brought up the 2023 Gaza offensive, where entire residential blocks, refugee camps, and hospitals were obliterated by Israeli airstrikes. The phrase carpet bombing was no longer metaphorical for Gaza. For many, Israel's complaints now rang hollow. The first week of this war had already etched itself into the region's blood-soaked history. But as the death toll mounted and new weapons entered the fray, one thing became increasingly clear. This was no longer a conflict driven by strategy alone. It was a battle of narratives, of survival, and of sheer willpower, one where every civilian life lost risked pushing the region into an irreversible abyss. The fire that covered Gaza, Iran unleashes Sejjil amid rising accusations. As the conflict escalates, the scars of devastation stretch far beyond missiles and explosions. Gaza, a narrow strip of land often caught in the crosshairs of geopolitics, now resembles a furnace from above. Reports emerging from the front line paint a harrowing picture. For over a week, the people of Gaza have endured a siege that knows no break. Bombs rain down with chilling regularity, and the very ground seems to boil under the relentless shelling. Satellite imagery shows an almost systematic pattern of destruction, one that observers have begun to call carpet bombing. Entire city blocks are flattened with such precision and consistency that from above the land looks like it's covered in a blanket of fire. This isn't just hyperbole, it's a tactic reminiscent of America's invasion of Iraq in 2003, where military and civilian structures alike were vaporized in sweeping aerial campaigns. The Gaza Health Authority has confirmed over 1,000 deaths, with many more injured or missing. Civilians, particularly women and children, make up the bulk of the casualties. The remaining population, over 2 million people, are now living without access to clean water, electricity, or basic medical services. Safe zones simply do not exist. One of the most distressing revelations has come from multiple human rights organizations. Groups like Amnesty International, B'Tselem, and Human Rights Watch have released documents accusing Israeli Defense Forces, IDF, of using civilians as human shields, a claim echoed by
legal experts and international observers. In some recorded cases, Palestinian civilians were allegedly forced to approach suspicious objects, potentially explosive, while soldiers remained at a distance. Others were made to remain in buildings marked for potential military activity. Despite these accusations, Israel's recent statements have shifted blame outward. After a series of Iranian missile strikes rocked several Israeli cities, Tel Aviv claimed that Iran had intentionally targeted hospitals and civilian areas. But many around the globe see this narrative as deeply ironic. How can a nation accused of launching one of the most sustained civilian bombing campaigns in recent memory now lecture others on wartime conduct? Meanwhile, Iran's actions have also taken a new and dangerous turn. For the first time, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard has confirmed the use of their prized Sejjil ballistic missiles in live combat. This revelation marks a serious escalation, one that changes the entire dynamic of the regional conflict. Codenamed Operation True Promise, the Iranian offensive involved coordinated strikes on what Tehran claims were strategic Israeli sites, including intelligence hubs and military air bases. Videos shared by Iranian state media show night launches of the Sejjil missile, a two-stage solid-fuel behemoth capable of traveling 2,000 kilometers and bypassing Israel's multi-layered air defenses, including the Iron Dome and the Arrow system. Each Sejjil warhead weighs up to 700 kilograms, enough to flatten entire structures. But the real threat lies in its stealth and maneuverability. Able to be launched quickly and from mobile platforms, the Sejjil can evade radar systems and complicate interception efforts. Despite Israeli claims that all 8 missiles were intercepted, local media and social networks showed images of impact craters, especially in Tel Aviv's Raya district and in parts of the occupied West Bank. Defense analysts are calling the Sejjil a game changer. Its speed, trajectory shifts, and resistance to jamming technologies make it far superior to the older Shahab series. And perhaps more troubling, Iran has not ruled out using more of these advanced missiles. But Iran isn't stopping at Sejjil. Rumors have begun circulating about the possible deployment of the Kibar ballistic missile, also known by its internal designation Khorram Sharf. Unveiled in recent military parades but never before used in conflict, the Kibar is said to carry a warhead more than twice the size of Sejjil's, up to 1,500 kilograms. It also uses an atmospheric guidance system, allegedly allowing it to achieve up to 30 meters of accuracy without relying on satellite or terminal guidance systems. If deployed, Kibar could potentially render most modern interception systems ineffective. Its advanced sensors allow it to detect and adapt to electronic interference mid-flight, making it harder to deflect or destroy. This new technology, if confirmed, suggests Iran has entered a new era of indigenous missile production, one that could alter the balance of power across the entire Middle East. And yet, as terrifying as these technical advancements are, the real fear lies in what they could do if aimed at dense urban centers. Iran insists its targets are strictly military, but with both sides trading accusations and missiles falling ever closer to civilians, the risk of total regional war has never been greater. Despite international calls for restraint, neither side is backing down. Iran's messages remain defiant, insisting that its latest wave of strikes is just the beginning if Israeli aggression continues. Tehran's supreme leader has warned of unimaginable consequences should another hospital or school in Gaza be bombed. On the other side, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu remains under immense pressure to respond with overwhelming force, not just from his political allies, but also from a furious public reeling from the strikes on Haifa, Tel Aviv, and Be'er Sheva. In one of the most tragic incidents so far, investigators confirmed that a cluster bomb had been deployed, possibly attached to one of Iran's ballistic missiles. The weapon scattered more than 20 submunitions, each carrying 2.5 kilograms of explosives. The result? Massive destruction across an 8-kilometer radius. One fragment even landed in a daycare center, terrifying the toddlers inside. Miraculously, no lives were lost there, but several houses nearby sustained heavy damage. It's worth noting that neither Israel nor Iran are signatories to the 2008 Convention on Cluster Munitions, a treaty that bans the use of such weapons. Legally, both countries remain within their technical rights to use them, but the ethical debate is another story entirely. As tensions reach a boiling point, diplomats in Geneva, Doha, and New York scramble to craft a ceasefire plan. But with missiles flying overhead and fires still raging in both nations, words feel increasingly meaningless. The conflict has entered a new phase, one not just of weapons, but of willpower, survival, and global scrutiny. This is not just a war between Iran and Israel. It's a war about narratives, about who is telling the truth, and about whether the international community will continue watching in silence.